Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Education and Early Years Assessor Network for September 25. It's lovely to have you all here today, and it's really great that you've taken the time out of your really busy schedules to join us. So let's make a start on the session. So you can see on screen now, this is a bit of an agenda for the day. So we've got quite a lot to get through today, and you'll be hearing from various members of our moderation team, as well as our sector manager, Janet King, who's joined us on the call today, and from myself as part of the provider development team. So you've probably seen many of us before, and I won't do introductions for everyone. There's a lot of us on the call today, but just to say thank you to my NCFE colleagues for joining us this morning and for your input. So we're going to start with a bit of an update from one of our chief moderators, Joe, followed by some key tips and advice around assignment 2 part 1 for the early years educator pathway. We're then going to watch a short video that we, in true Blue Peter fashion, we prepared earlier, where we're going to listen and hear from Rachel Palmer from Sheffield College around how she prepares for planning for 2 part 1 and around how she plans for moderation. We're then going to talk through top tips for standardisation and moderation feedback, and then you'll hear from myself around further support, where you can get that and what form it takes, and some CPD opportunities that we have going forward over the upcoming academic year. We'll then ask at the end of the session, as we always do, for a bit of an evaluation. So there'll be some Slido polls within this session. We'll be watching that recording, and we'll also be asking you for a little bit of feedback at the end. Just to say before we move on to Joe's update that if you are brand new to education and early years, delivering for the first time this year, you'll still find a lot of this session really useful. So please do stick around. If you are already delivering and you are delivering both generation 1 and generation 2, some of this you may already know, but the input from the moderators today will be really good way of helping support you moving forward with the run through of the new criteria. So without further ado, I shall ask you to scan the QR code on screen now, and we will start with a few Slidos before moving over to one of our chief moderators. So if you could scan this on screen with your smartphone now, that would be wonderful. If you don't have a smartphone, please don't worry. You can still contribute to the polls in the chat. And in addition to that, you can also go to slido.com and include the code, the digits at the bottom of the screen there to get onto the Slido. And Cody has really kindly popped the link into the chat as well, if you can't access via the QR code. So your screen should change on your Slido now, and the first question I'd like to ask you, which if you've been to one of these networks before, you'll recognise, is on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident do you currently feel assessing the education and early years T-level? Now, it's absolutely fine wherever you fit on this scale. It's absolutely fine. It's a starting point for the session. If you're brand new, you may be at the lower end of the scale, and that's okay. If you've done this before, you might be somewhere in the middle towards the top of the scale, equally fine. There's no test or trick questions. It's just for us to kind of gauge where everybody's at. And actually, we've got quite a spread we can see there. So we've got some people who are feeling, you know, a little bit anxious maybe and a little bit new to the whole process. And we've got some colleagues and peers on there who are at the other end of the scale and may have some wonderful insights to share from their own practice with those that are newer. And please do so in the chat. If you've got anything you'd like to share, then we love a bit of networking and collaboration. So please do share that. That's wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay, second question, really quick one, a yes or a no. So whether or not you've attended one of these networks before, you'll see there's some further questions that we base from this later on in the session, but this is just for us to gauge how many of you are returning to the network and how many of you are joining us for the first time. That's great. I'll leave that on screen for a couple more seconds and let everybody answer that one. And these polls are still active in the background as well, so you can still access these even if I move on to the next slide. Great. So we've got quite a high proportion of you who've been here before, so it's lovely to see you again. And welcome to those of you who are new. Hopefully you'll find it really useful, and we'll see you at the next one, and I'll show you how to access the next one and when that's going to be later on in the session. Okay, so thank you for that. I'm going to hand over now just for a few moments to Jo for her Chief Moderator update.
Thanks, Gemma. Morning, everybody. I hope you all had a lovely summer, and I hope you're all feeling ready to tackle the challenges that a new academic year always brings. I'm just going to go through a few updates this morning. It's a brief update, really, but I just want to remind everybody where we're at in the moderation cycle, talk through a few key findings from the Chief Moderator report from the last session, and just give you a bit of news on some upcoming research and insight that we're currently working on. So in terms of where we're at with moderation cycle at the moment, our first moderation visits for the new EYE Part 1 criteria took place last week. So we've been out and we're already starting to receive some really good feedback about how we can work with the new Part 1 criteria. So that's really good. One of our moderators kindly gave us some feedback. The highlight of the visit that she attended last week was the assessor's supportive and encouraging approach, which created a positive atmosphere where students were motivated to perform at their best. So it was a really, really positive first visit that took place. Moderators are all really busy at the moment, making contact with their allocated providers, arranging Teams meetings to introduce themselves, planning those moderation visits, and, as I say, starting to carry them out. So we're getting busier every day as we speak. With that, just a reminder, if you haven't been allocated a moderator or you haven't heard from your moderator yet, it might be that you haven't booked your students onto their occupational specialism. So just a quick reminder, I'm sure Gemma might remind you later in the session as well. Please book your students onto their occupational specialism. That's what triggers your allocation of moderator, and that's what starts the process. So they would then be in touch following that allocation coming through. In terms of the Chief Moderator report findings, so at the end of every session, we produce a report based on our findings throughout the structured observations. And there was a few key things. So I would encourage you all to read the Chief Moderator report, which is available on the website. And I've put a guide as to where you'll find that on the website. But there was a few key things that I just wanted to remind everybody, really. So one key area was justifications, and we do ask for structured observations for justifications for the marks to be really clear so that moderators can see how assessors have come to make the decisions that they have. So just a reminder, really, to be as clear as you can, link to the evidence of what you've observed, and perhaps to give as much detail as possible. It sometimes helps to say perhaps why you haven't given a higher mark, what wasn't there to justify that higher mark. That's really helpful for moderators. The other key area where we still notice some discrepancies, I would say, is in professional discussion. So we did notice that there were some missed opportunities to encourage students to contextualise and reflect on their practice. So just a reminder for assessors to be encouraging students to link their responses within their professional discussions to their observation where possible and to their practice. And that also does apply for EYE Part 1 competency criteria, and we are going to discuss that a bit more later on. So that's really relevant for both parts of assignment 2. And then the last thing that still becomes an issue, and I know it's a concern in some settings, especially small preschools and nursery settings, that there are quite a lot of distractions and interruptions during professional discussions. So again, just a reminder, really, please plan ahead with the settings that you're working with to ensure that a quiet space is available and that supervisors understand the nature of the assessment. There was so much good practice that we saw from the structured observations, and we see such a high level, high standard of students in terms of their professional practice, and it's so lovely to see. We love going out. So please have a look at those reports. Also, if you were present with students for the last session, read your individual final moderation report as well ahead of the next session. So the last thing I'm just going to update you on is some research and insight that we're currently working on. So following feedback that we've had from providers, we're really keen to think about ways that we can continue to offer you support and develop sessions that might help you in the future. So just to update you on a couple of sessions that we are working on, we're looking at the possibility of offering a session where you could carry out a practice structured observation with a moderator present and feedback and discuss that following the visit. We're also looking at a session where, with a possibility of a moderator carrying out your standardization pack with you. So the standardization pack that we release in October, having a moderator present to support your discussions and your standardization decisions. So we are working on those as we speak. And I'm currently working with a provider that's kindly agreed to allow me to trial some of these sessions and give me feedback on these. So really, it's just to say, watch this space, because I'm going to carry these out, get some feedback and think about what's worked, what hasn't, and be looking at hopefully offering these in the near future. So that's just a few things from me. I think I'm handing over to Janet now for an update on Gen 2.
I think you are, Jo. That's great. Let's move on. That sounds absolutely fantastic,
Thank
those
you.
sessions. So I look forward to hearing more about those. Okay, hi, Janet, over to you.
Thank you. So, thank you, Jo. You know, what's really lovely is to hear all those positive stories, isn't it? About how, I mean, we all know how hard the assessors are working, and the fruits of their labours, if you like, is what you're now being able to see and validate, and that's just wonderful. So, well done, everybody on this call for your hard work. As I always say, it doesn't just happen. So, thank you so much for your contributions and for everything that you do for our students, your students, our students, for the sector as a whole. Okay, so this short update really is concentrating on Generation 1. So it's really focusing on your second years, because that's where you'll hear the wonderful Rachel Palmer talking about how she does things at Sheffield College. So just really the focus now is on your second years. So it's looking at, having said that, the criteria is the criteria. So we've still got the same criteria from the early years educator, from the Department for Education, of course. But what this slide is doing is showing you that clarity. So your Generation 1 students, or those students that are now second years that started in 24, that are going to finish in summer 26, the first link on here is what will be useful for all the documentation for you, and then for Generation 2, for those students that are just registered and just in their first year now, they will use that second link, and that's where all the resources are. If you're wondering about different versions of the EYE educator criteria, please don't worry, because the criteria are the criteria, they haven't changed. So don't hold back on any assessing or anything like that. But just for clarity, if you are looking at specifications, if you're looking at the different criteria and so on, and you're looking for different documentations, those links will just give you that clear pathway to the correct versions for the students that are at that stage. So whether they're second years, 24 to 26, first link, or if they're Generation 2, 25 to 27, second link. And that's really helpful for everybody, I think, on this call, including myself, because there's so much information. So it just helps us to zone into to those right versions and correct versions. Especially difficult, isn't it, when you're working with both groups, when you're teaching or assessing on one sort of one version and on the other as well. So we do understand that transition is tricky. Okay, if your Generation 1, if your 24 to 26 documentation is same with John, when you go on that, please don't worry, it's valid for those students that registered in 24 all the way through. We're just making it clear that new registrations will not be on those versions of qualifications. I'm just keeping my third eye there on the chat. And as for the watermarks, etc., just watch this space. The content will not, however, be changing in terms of what's in that specification. So what you can see for assignment 2 part 1 for those second years who are currently in that going into that sort of phase of moderation, the criteria have been arranged into themes which value and appreciate holistic approaches to assessment of skills-based criteria through observation. And I think that's really important, just to reassure you that when you're doing your observations, and you may well have planned to see certain criteria to try and group things together within these themes, that you can also, of course, which is something you do so wonderfully and so skillfully, is to have that holistic approach and to be able to bring things together to maximize what you see, and to also raise opportunity for further discussion or further observation of things that were perhaps only partially seen or met through discussion. So, as that second bullet point says there, holistic observations are very much welcomed. I don't know how you would get through it any other way. So holistic observations, and please use appropriate forms to track student evidence in line with the guidance provided. Professional discussions with students for assignment 2 part 1 for those early years educator competencies can take place back in the classroom, or indeed can take place in the setting, as long as it's safe to do so. So you have got that little bit more agility and a little bit more flexibility when it comes to part 1 and those competencies. When you're thinking about your structured observations, which I know are also we're going to be coming on the agenda for your second years, everything must take place in situ. And as Joe was saying, the more prep you can do for that, and the more liaison with the setting that you can have, then the more sort of straightforward, I guess, that process will be. But please don't worry, we know that things go wrong. You are working in a setting where things are changeable. So we are very appreciative and acknowledge that. Students may refer to documentation, including work products, child observations that they may have done on children in their settings, planning, reflective accounts, policy and procedures to support their professional discussion. So they will be able to refer to things, they'll be able to refer to documents to move discussions forward. They may even want to prepare some notes, but it will be keywords that we're looking for, things that will prompt the student and things that will move a discussion forward. So not something that relies totally on what they've prepared, but it's got to be that conversational discussion. But by all means, students need to prepare, and sometimes the best way is to show an example. We also appreciate and acknowledge that. So students must have achieved competence in all that EYE criteria before they can be considered for achievement of this particular occupational specialism, and all those final decisions will be subject to moderation. But anything that you are doing, it takes you know, a good 18 months to get through those competencies. We know that. And so anything that you are doing is absolutely going to be validated through that moderation process. So please don't worry. And I wish you all the very best of luck with that. And you can see there's a link there to the competence criteria that we're discussing today in terms of generation 1. Okay, so I do believe, Gemma, that I'm passing back to you and we're listening to the lovely video. Thank you.
Indeed you are. Thanks so much, Janet. Thank you very, very much. So you've had that update from both Joe and Janet, and there's been some really, really important information, tips and future insights and things we're looking at doing moving forward. But what we thought would be really wonderful for you to see was how somebody else has approached the planning and the moderation for assignment 2 part 1 already. So as Janet says, we're going to move on now and we're going to watch a short recording that myself, Janet, and one of our moderators, Laura Robshaw, did with the wonderful Rachel Palmer from Sheffield College. Now Rachel has kindly done this recording for us ahead of time, and she's also said she'd be happy to take questions around the recording. So please do use the Q&A feature if you have any questions related specifically to anything we talk about within that recording, and we can pass those on directly to Rachel and she would be more than happy to answer them. So without further ado, we'll move on. Please do someone from NCFE give me the thumbs up that we can hear it okay, and fingers crossed it should be absolutely fine. I'm going to turn my camera off so I don't distract you while the video is playing. Hello, and thank you for joining us. Today we're joined by Rachel Palmer from Sheffield College to talk about Assignment 2 Part 1 Planning and Moderation. So Rachel currently works with 19 Year 2 students and has really kindly agreed to take questions about her approach after the recording today. Please do know, everyone, that although Rachel will be talking about her planning, she won't be sharing those detailed plans as they really are individual to her provider and her students. We're also joined by Janet King, our Sector Manager for Education and Childcare, and Laura Robshaw, who's one of our experienced moderators for education and early years. So let's get started.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Gemma. And Rachel, thank you so much for sharing your very busy schedule with us today. Now, when we hear about the EYE competencies, I think we all kind of take a big sigh and we have to get into a particular mindset to talk about them perhaps. But keeping that positive light has been something that you've managed to do, Rachel, and we're really impressed by that and inspired by that. And we know that other people will be too. So just thinking about how you prepare for those and the way that you've used 4 activity plans to do that. Do you think you could talk us through how you've managed to do that? Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So the assessment plans kind of took into account practicing those key skills ready for structured observations, so building on their confidence and their planning techniques ready for those structured observations, but also an opportunity for the students to kind of reflect and improve ready for, again, the structured and be marked and banned against those practical skills. So yeah, really building on their confidence and making sure that they are fully ready for what's to come. The 4 observations that we've kind of put them into. So the first one is a story stack activity that incorporates a maths element. So again, it is similar to structured observation 1. Number 2 is a maths and an enabling environment, I suppose, that we've asked for. So it's creating that environment wherever they want it, really. So it could be the role play area, it could be the outdoor area. We've had people set up maybe a display, so if they've got a book of the week, they're setting up a big display. So it is that enabling, you know, language rich environment that we're looking for, not just an activity. It's how they've incorporated probably all areas of learning, really, holistically. The third one is care, healthcare and well-being. So that's more around maybe supporting individual care routines, so care plans such as snack time, possibly, if they can do toileting, nappy changing, any kind of things that they can do around that, but also having that health kind of talk around it. So maybe during snack time, talking about healthy eating, the importance of healthy eating, maybe what foods they might eat at home. Some students choose to do, you know, storybooks. They feel more comfortable introducing that and reading that whilst they have snack. But also preparing those social kind of skills, so getting the children more involved with those hands-on skills, promoting independence, self-care skills, things like that. So that's quite a busy one. And then the 4th one we've kind of introduced, because there's a lot around around well-being, it's around personal care, emotions, things like that. So we've put in for the students to kind of create an activity around personal safety, so it can kind of incorporate maybe some of those personal safety skills, but also talk about the well-being and emotional side of things, maybe sharing, you know, key things that might have happened, experiences that they might have had. So it might be like strange danger, it might be crossing the roads, you know, road safety, things like that, and reflecting on like some kind of morals and, you know, giving them that option to share and to learn, really. We've put that one in because students like to be able to plan and take ownership of what I come out to see. So having something that they really have to do in that moment, rather than dwelling on maybe some of the questions that I might be asking them, they do like to be more practically, you know, being more practical when I come out. So they're the 4 that I've kind of grouped them into. They've been shared with the students, they seem happy with them, and they are currently preparing to activities around, you know, the settings, planning, themes of the week, topics, so it does fit into settings planning, because we have found that settings are really eager for them to link it to what they're doing in setting. So that's quite important that they've thought about that and they've had them discussions and that sharing time with staff within those settings.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rachel. And what I loved about that when you were talking is the fact that you're looking at that holistic child and you're looking at every aspect of what goes on in that day-to-day practice, aren't you? And breaking that down. Obviously, there's going to be opportunity within an enabling environment, within maths activities, within those well-being and personal safety side of things. There's going to be such opportunity for diverse, holistic observation. But you're breaking down what's really important as in your role as an early years educator. These things, looking at the whole child, really, really important. And those 4 activities really lend themselves to that and allow for the criteria then to be grouped in such a way. So that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Now, we do know when we look at those competencies that an awful lot of them rely on a knowledge base, which, you know, is perhaps best achieved or complemented by the professional discussions. So how do you use those professional discussions to support the criteria, Rachel?
So we've kind of, I worked really close with the lecturing staff really in the team, just to try and get us head around how they group into different observations. So I do work quite closely with the staff here, and we have sat together and we have kind of worked as a team. And I think that's the way forward. You need that supporting element to get it right. So the questions are kind of related to what I'm going to see during that day, and picking up on things that I might not have fully seen, you know, the questions that lend it to that observation. So, for example, the enabling environment one, there's a statement that says all children are entitled to a quality education that meets the needs and promotes their potential. Now, it is a statement. It's hard to justify what that's looking for. So, giving them a bit more, I've put, how is this met through an enabling environment whilst considering prime and specific areas of learning? So that gives them a little bit more thinking about, you know, directly something they've been learning in class, but something that can relate to, as a starting point, their activity that I've just seen and how that lends itself into that statement, really. So yeah, it did take a bit of time to kind of collate those questions. But obviously the statements do need something to kind of back them up. So an example of what you're looking for, so then they can start on the right track.
I think that's really useful, isn't it, of what you've done there for the students. And what I love about that is that coherence between theory and practice. So you're not just randomly sort of bolting on some of these professional discussions, but you're thinking, how can that be anchored to the students' experience, to what's going on in that placement, and how that day-to-day practice is allowing opportunity. So you might have seen something about, you know, where a student has used or applied knowledge of equality, and you can talk about the Equality Act. So there are ways, aren't there? And it's really getting to grips with those statements, isn't it? And thinking, how are these do they best fit as professional discussions, but also how they can link to what you've seen. And that doesn't just happen. So I know there's a lot of thought and a lot of thinking that's gone into the way that you've brought that together, and how you've been able to wrap professional discussions around things that you've seen that hint at some of those statements and help you to bring those out in context as well, which is fantastic. So my last question for you, Rachel, is about the holisticness of your approach, which is obviously clear from what you've talked about. So when you think about that holistic approach and how you're gathering all of this information together, it would be really good just to share how do you support the students? How do they feel as though they're preparing for the best possible experience in their placements, Rachel?
Yeah, so I mean, it starts early doors for us. So our year ones are well into kind of initial assessment week. So it's preparing them for what's to come. So one of our first activities with them is to kind of choose a storybook and be able to kind of speak about that story, why they've chosen it, try and link it to some of the key areas of development that Sarah's introduced, which is the lecturing staff. and just see what they've got really, and get used to that, standing up and explaining and bringing in resources, because some of them have already prepared resources and got that. It's just nice to see that side from the beginning, and obviously implementing that expectation of what, you know, what is to come, the confidence side, the building up, creating slides, talking us through it. So being able to present and, you know, the key element, talking, professional discussions, things like that. So, and then we do go out quite frequently, and I know the lecturing staff, again, they come out, they do some meetings with the students, they watch what they're doing in setting, give some feedback to them on what they've seen, what they could do better. So it's quite reflective, and it's nice that they get to go out and obviously see the students. We know what each other's role is, but they do need to meet in the middle. We need to know what each other are doing, and that balance really works well. The students kind of like the lecturing staff going out and getting to grips with what they've done, because they know exactly what they've been doing in class, so they might question them on some of the things that they've been learning about and how it relates to the activity that they've just done. So that it does work well. It might only be, you know, 10-15 minutes visit, but it's just showing your face, keeping that relationship with those settings that are providing those placements, and, you know, setting the expectation of what a mentor looks like and what kind of support these students need in setting, which is quite key, because I know we've had a lot of feedback from settings saying, you know, have you shared this with us? Where can I find this information? And a lot of it is trying to make sure the student is sharing that information from the beginning. We have set up like a website for settings and a Padlet with the information on there, but I know some settings don't have time to kind of access these, so it is important that we are regular in contact with these settings. But yeah, as for students, I do online meets with them if they're so like when Laura comes out for moderation, I'm doing online meets with these students, preparing them for what's to come, making sure that they're ready with their activity plans, letting them talk me through some of the questions, so there's constant practice, ready for what, yeah, like what's to come. And just, yeah, just being contactable at all times, really. There's always emails, you know, even in the middle of the night, the students are constantly thinking about what's coming and fretting. So yeah, just that reassurance for them wherever I can.
Brilliant, thank you. And I think the key thing there about the coherence of the journey as well. So working with the tutors, working alongside the settings, bringing that journey together for the students so that they have the best possible experience. That joined up thinking, if you like, is really, really important, I think, and that shines from what you've told us about. Absolutely fantastic. Really good to hear from you, Rachel, and the way that you're approaching assignment 2 part 1 for your second years, and I wish you all the luck with it. Thank you very much for talking to us today. I'll hand over to, am I going back to you, Gemma?
Indeed, we are. So yeah, I would just like to echo what Janet's just said there. I think that that collaborative approach between tutors, assessors, placement settings, and indeed your moderator is really key. It's a really important foundation to set from really early on, and I think you're doing that wonderfully well, Rachel. Thank you so much for sharing that. With that in mind, I think maybe it might be nice now if we moved on to have a little bit of a chat with Laura around moderation and that process. So thanks, Laura. If you could talk us a little bit through about how that works, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah, so a little bit about the moderation process for part 1. So luckily, the Sheffield College had registered their students onto the occupational specialist nice and early. So it meant the allocation did come through to me straight away. So if you are an assessor and you've not heard from a moderator, please make sure that your students are registered on your occupational specialism. So the Sheffield College had done that. It came through in August. I contacted Rachel straight away because I had them last series. So I did contact her straight away, and we met back in August. We met straight away. We talked about her plans. So it was really nice to see how the 111 criteria have been split over the 4 plans. And Rachel did send them through to me. And I had a look through them, didn't I? And made sure that they was all covered. Had a little bit of feedback, didn't we? But all in all, it was really positive to see how the Sheffield College had done it. And what I think is not being covered is the way that you're expecting students, you've split it up, haven't you, to say this is what you'll do before the observation. So that's where child observations are coming into it. This is what you'll do on my observation visit, and this is what you'll do in the professional discussion. So it's really clear what the students need to do. And I think that before is crucial this time, because there's so much criteria about planning in line with children's needs and interests and meeting individual needs and special educational needs. So I think having observations of children and letting them inform your activities will really help to meet a lot of that criteria as well. So it was really good how Rachel had pulled them plans together. We then had to talk about the moderation visit, and it had to take place in one day, which is a little bit worrying, wasn't it? But we talked it through and we came up with a plan together. So in Rachel's case, we decided Rachel's going to do it with 2 more confident students. So we're going to do longer observations, one in a student in the morning and a student in the afternoon. Remembering for part 1 that there's a lot more flexibility with timings, so you don't have to keep to that hour like you do with structured observations. It's entirely up to providers how they do it. We're not saying this is how it all has to be done, but in this case, this is how we're doing it with Sheffield. So yeah, it'll be 4 plans, but over 2 students, 1 morning and 1 afternoon. We also tried to reassure Rachel about the moderation process, and that's about our moderator and assessor decisions aligning more so than a student having to achieve all 111 competencies. So I do think it is about those decisions aligning. And we also had a conversation, didn't we, about some of the longer criteria with lots of bullet points. So Rachel mentioned about her first plan is around doing a story sack literacy activity. So within that professional discussion, Rachel might only pull out the literacy areas of the EYFS, for example. She might only pull out child development in relation to that age that they're working with. And as long as Rachel puts working towards or a partial and our evidence matches, then that's sufficient for the purpose of moderation. Okay, Rachel's going to have to go back out and see that student meet all of the bullet points, but for the purpose of the moderation visit, it is okay if there are some working towards criteria, and that's applicable for things like transitions. They might only cover 1 or 2 transitions rather than the full list. There's the care routines or the policies. So making it specific like you would on any other visit, make it specific to what you've seen on that day. The professional discussion, as we've mentioned, complements what's been seen. And as long as the decisions align, then that's okay. And anything not seen, we can discuss at the feedback meeting, which we've planned in when we've planned the actual visit in, haven't we? Is there anything I've missed there, Rachel? Do you want to add anything?
Just that you're really supportive, you're there to answer any questions, and you always get back to me, which is great for us. I think for assess point of view, you feel on your own at some point, so it's nice that someone's always in the background to answer any queries that I might have got. But yeah, really nice to know like the day-to-day running, what your expectation is for the moderation process, so we can get planning and preparing the students. And just making sure that obviously I'm doing the working towards the justification, working towards or competent, and a lot of it probably would be working towards until I've seen a lot of those observations. And obviously, like you've said, the all holistic approach that I've made, they will all interlink, and I might see it 4 times. So they are really confident at this skill by the end. But yeah, I would just appreciate your time and obviously getting back to me when I've asked you any questions.
Yeah, we also discussed as well, didn't we, about the repetition. So some students might have already done a literacy plan in year 1. So we spoke about when you're choosing a student, perhaps choose a student that might have not met as many competencies and let them have a try at that plan again. So you're kind of building on their skills. And although it is for the purpose of moderation, it's helping develop them as an individual, isn't it? And build on the skills and meet more competencies for the purpose of moderation. So we chatted about that a bit, didn't we?
We did. Yeah. It's just down to that justification and just having that discussion with you and just making sure that we're both on the same page, really. And it is in preparation again for those structured observations, and just really beneficial.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's some really good ideas there and some great insights on how to plan for that moderation visit and how to make sure that that you're all comfortable, the students know what's expected of them, and that you feel safe and confident with that moderation process as well. Rachel, is really lovely to hear, and I think some of the comments and things that Laura's just shared there will be really useful to other providers who are perhaps doing this for the first time, and feeling that little level of anxiety about how this all works. So Laura, there was some really good insights there and some questions answered, I think, that I have definitely heard before as part of curriculum calls and other sessions that we've done. So thank you for that. I think once you've done that planning and everything's sort of set up, you're ready to go, you've had that initial contact with your moderator, it's then about what are the next steps, Laura? So could we talk through those a little bit and what happens next?
Yeah, so we've got the date sorted. Rachel will go on and complete the scheduled assessment on the portal. Once that's ready, I will do a sampling plan. Once the sampling plan is ready, Rachel knows that she has to send her initial plans and activity plans a week before. They go onto the OneDrive link that I'll send her. We then go out and do the visit, and following that, we've already agreed a date for all that documentation to be back in. I'll check that alongside my documentation, and then we've arranged to meet, and we try to do that as soon after the visit as possible. And then after the meeting, we produce a report, and the report is there detailing the outcome of the visit and where applicable any actions, and we try to do that as much as possible, like as straight after the visit, as close to the visit as possible, but it does all have to take place within the 10 days SLA. Yeah, that's the next step, isn't it?
Fantastic. I think that's really clear. I think it's nice, it will be nice for other providers to hear that there is a really structured process to it, and that that those nerves perhaps of doing it for the first time, you will get a lot of support and you will know what's needed and when. It's a very supportive journey with your moderator, and I think it's worth noting as well here about that, those decisions matching is what's really key here, and it is really supportive. I'd like to say a huge thank you to Rachel for joining us for this recording. I think that other providers will find your insights, your approaches, both inspiring and really useful to help them plan and prepare going forward. I'd just also like to say that, it's really important that we network and we spend time talking about these things, and sharing these kinds of ideas is what makes us all great and what makes us all feel comfortable with both moderation, those 111 criteria, as Janet said at the beginning. We get a lot of questions around the volume of those and how that's going to work. And I think between yourself and Laura, Rachel, you've really showed how that can work today and how you can frame that really positively and transparently for your students and working together, and how that's worked really well for you. It's been a wonderful discussion. We hope those of you watching find it useful and it will support you towards your own planning as you work towards assignment 2 part 1. Thank you for everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Laura, and thanks, Janet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, wow, what can I say? Thank you so much, Rachel. I know you're somewhere on the call today. I can't see you, but thank you so much for doing that recording with myself, Janet and Laura. And I hope those of you that have just listened have found that really useful. What I'm going to ask you to do on the next slide is just have a think about some of the key takeaways that you've taken from that recording and share them with us on Slido. I'll put that slide up in just a second, and while I do, I'll have a look through some of the Q&A as well in case there's anything that we can answer while you're putting your responses into that Slido. As I can see, it's been busy away while we've been watching the recording. So if you could go back onto your Slido, please, and make your comments on screen, and I will have a look at the Q&A. in the background while you're doing that. Okay, so we've had quite a lot of questions. I'm going to scroll through and see if I can find those that have been upvoted the most, just so that we can tackle those ones first if they haven't already been answered. So just quickly, we'll go through a couple. So Iona says, could we have a copy of the questions that Laura uses to break up the competencies? I think we'll probably take most of the questions, if they're to do directly with the recording or Laura's or Rachel's planning, sorry, we'll pass those on to Rachel. I can see she's commented a couple of times in the chat as well. And I do believe that there is a way of accessing Rachel's documents as well through the TES website, if I'm correct. But I will have a look at the chat and make sure that I'm accurate in saying that. Next question is from, a lot of these have got answers already, so thanks moderators for doing that in the background. Iona also says she couldn't find the chief moderator's report from this summer. Could we send a link to it? Yes, indeed we can, Iona. I can put that into the follow-up email as well, if that would be useful when I send any follow-up questions. This is wonderful. I love these comments. Thank you so much for doing this. Words like feeling relieved, you know, really interesting ideas, reassurance of how we've also done observations, reassurance that the 4 themes I've chosen to base our observations on seem similar. These are really, really good insights. And Rachel, again, thank you so much. People are taking away a lot from watching just that short little video. Also, please do let us know if more videos like that would be useful for you, and perhaps any themes that you think might help going forward. I know that Joe's future insights and maybe some of those sessions might cover some of those things, but please do you know, reach out if there's anything you think would be useful. Becky, I can see you've got your hands up, and because there's so many people on the call, it's a bit tricky for turning on and off mics, but if you've got something you'd like to ask or pop, you can please just pop it in the chat, and I'll come to it as soon as I can. Okay, so just because I'm conscious of time, I'm going to move on and I'm going to be handing over to Laura, but this Slido will still be open in the background, so you can still you're all right, Becky, no problem. You can still add comments into that Slido as we move on. So over to you, Laura.
Hi, thank you. Can you all see me there? Is that okay? Yeah, good. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Rachel as well, just to say thank you very much for giving up a time to do that video, because you are so busy, and it is really good that we could get that and pull that together. So thank you very much. There's just a couple of things on this slide just to reiterate what was mentioned in the video, just for that clarity. The moderation window is open now until the end of January 2026. As we mentioned, if you've not heard from a moderator, then do make sure that your bookings are on. You can also get in touch with Gemma. I'm sure she'll put us in touch as well if you are worrying about that. If you are in year 1, you've not got to worry yet about moderation. And just to clarify that, you can start signing your students off for the competencies. Go out, as Rachel said, prepare your students the best as you can. You can start going out. Just be aware there might be some repetition needed for the purpose of moderation next year, so we do just have to remind you of that. In terms of your competencies, so we know as assessors that you do like to get them signed off by the end of January going into structured observations, but we just want to let you know that they can be cross-referenced to the structured observations. You can carry on doing competency observations right up until the 15th of May 2026, so just letting you know that. As we said, you do have to plan all the EYE competency-based criteria across your students for that 1-day visit. But we've mentioned in the video, it is about planning for it. The working towards is okay where needed, just making sure that those moderation and assessment decisions align. And we can discuss anything else in that follow-up visit as well. And after that moderation visit, you'll get a report. So the next slide, please. So now we just wanted to share some top tips. So we'll share this between different moderators as we go through. Before we start on this, we know from meeting with lots and lots of providers already, speaking to lots of assessors, that you're doing an amazing job at pulling these plans together. They are so good. They've taken so much time. You've been working on them over the last 12 months. So they are really, really good. So we just want to say that these are top tips maybe to enhance those plans, and not only enhancing them, but maybe if you've not started them, it will give you some tips and things to think about. So as we've touched on already, you need to be planning for them holistically, making sure that you're covering these strategies, the theory, as much as possible to be seen, because that's where it's stronger evidence, and then using that professional discussion to complement. The assessor and tutor, so as Rachel said in the video, just trying to have that time in lessons to be able to really prepare the students for those observations and for them professional discussions. It is really crucial. And value that time as well. Encourage the students to plan activities informed by child observations. There's so much criteria there about showing next steps, individual needs, individual interests. So making sure that they're doing child observations to feed into them activities and they know why they're doing what they're doing. And we've just put some of the criteria there as examples, what that might link to. Also about making sure that differentiation's clear. They can adapt the teaching styles, because we know there's criteria around that. Equality and diversity, that threads all the way through. So making sure there's links in the planning, and then they can reflect on that planning within their professional discussions. So as Janet said in the beginning, talking about and reflecting on their work products that they've done really help those discussions come to life. And then we've put on there at least one plan covers some form of special educational needs and disability. But we also know that some assessors have put that alongside all of the plans. So they're threading that through. So whatever works for you. There is no right or wrong way. It is about individual providers working with their students, their staff, to come up with plans that work for them. And in terms of moderation process, it's working then with their allocated moderator to see how it works. So in Rachel's case, she wants to do it over 2 students. I've got other assessors that are doing it over 4 students. So it's entirely up to you how you do it, and just your moderator is there to support. And then the next bit is just a few more tips in terms of encouraging, as we know before with the competencies before and structured observations. If there isn't a behaviour incident, sometimes it can be more difficult for students to show the PSED, the behaviour, the self-regulation. So if it's in the plan, at least then it won't be missed. Consider how to evidence working with others. Is there an opportunity on the day to feed back to a member of staff, for example, the next steps that they might consider for that child? Can they include some home learning ideas, bring those to the professional discussions, talk about them? That would really help in terms of 5.5, advocating child learning and development. So that's something that they could be doing, and you could be asking them to look at in class. Encouraging students to look at placement policies before, refer to these for 6.4. They should be demonstrating them in practice for 6C. You will have always had routine plans in the past, but this time being remembering to include that safer eating element and the risk of choking. And I will share some links in the chat that supports with that. And then the last one is just that detailed risk assessment will help with section 4, making sure that they refer to that within professional discussions and they're thinking about their employer, local and national requirements and the policies and procedures. And I will now pass on to Frances, who will focus a little bit more on planning as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Okay, so it's really key that your planning is robust. It will be a meaty document. We're not underestimating that at all, but it's really important that you want all your thoughts on your planning document, just in case, and we know that happens in early years, what you plan doesn't actually turn out. It could be that you have identified children that are going to be included and they don't turn up on the day, but at least we know that that individual student has been able to show just how robust their planning is. So we do need for you to consider identifying individual children and their individual learning needs. So you have identified these children. How are you going to support that child to be engaged and motivated, and what adaptations have you put in place in order to support that child? Sequencing has been mentioned quite a few times in the criteria, and by that we mean what has informed the activity that's taken place today. It could be along a theme that's happening in the setting, it could be the next letter for your phonics, it could be lots of different things, but it needs to not be a standalone activity. It needs to be informed by something that's happened before, whether maybe the room leader or the teacher has said, not sure about these 3 children, whether they understood what we were trying to portray. Can you do a bit of a more intense session with them? And then again, how that what comes out of that activity informs the next steps. As per usual, we do want a detailed activity description of what it is you want to do and why you want to do it, including the developmental areas for the children that you have planned to be involved in the activity. We'd like you to also mention the theorists and the rationale behind those theorists that you've chosen that support that activity, and that the criteria is clearly mapped. Sometimes I talk to my providers about having 2 columns. So in the left-hand column, it's all the information about the children, the activity, the theorists, the planning behind it. And then in the right-hand column, to link the specific criteria. It doesn't matter where you do it. We're not particular at all, other than we do like you to match and map your criteria so that it's clear for you as well as for us having a look at it, that you've considered all the criteria you plan to cover. Thank you, and it's on to Lisa.
Hello, thanks, Fran. Okay, so having already gone out to moderate 111 competencies, the provider and I have had the feedback conversation, and what we became aware of with the amount of criteria is how it's really useful sometimes to encourage the students to have a reflective journal or a log that they can refer to during the professional discussions. Also to consider like giving them scenarios to make it real, because like Rachel said, it's about making it relatable. Obviously, they are currently written sometimes in the form of a statement. And I think sometimes that can be a little bit off-putting if it becomes a little bit of a Q&A. Some students find that really difficult. So, you know, what we discussed, having already experienced it, is how things such as getting the student to either reflect on something they've done before in their workplace, it means that they become very animated about what they're saying. It means that they cover a number of criteria in that discussion. It also means that, you know, you're really hearing what they understand rather than them kind of always just referring to notes. So, you know, things like when you might say to them, a parent asks for a meeting to discuss concerns, what do you need to do? Who might you meet, you know, with to support a child's development? Why are there concerns and why? And, you know, already in that kind of scenario, you're going to cover things like people that may be involved, outside agencies, you're going to look at potential SEND needs, and the assessment of those kind of things. So things like that can really support. And also things like, how do you ensure child safety on arrival? So again, where the student starts talking you through, this is what I do, this is what we do from here to here, and then should a child fall, what might you do in that situation, and what are your procedures? You know, talk about those things, make it again come alive. Again, if a child suddenly becomes very ill whilst eating a snack, what are the procedures and what would you follow? Again, obviously we've put some information out there about the weaning, and obviously that does cover elements of this. So again, it's really important that students kind of again connect different elements, and then again this becomes holistic and it becomes relatable. And again, it might be again where you're looking at, you know, you're carrying out an activity when a new child you are with starts to become dysregulated. What do you think they might, you know, what might lead to them feeling this way? Consider transitions, consider EAL, SEN, self-regulation, and how each might play out. So it's not always kind of looking at one criteria. It's looking at how can we cover a number of those elements? How can we make it relatable? How can we make it more contextual for the student to have that conversation? So it's really gone down well with the provider, and they think they're now going to start putting this into their practice. And it kind of made them think, oh yeah, that's a way to do it. Again, there's no right or wrong way, but again, it sometimes a student might work better with that situation and another might like the Q&A situation. So that's, just some ideas to think on. So now moving over to Sarah.
Good morning, everyone. So the next 3 slides are going to be kind of regarding our standardisation with the moderators and talking about a few criteria that you may have a few problems with. So we're just going to tell you what would be seen to be fully met. So first off then, 1.2. An effective early years educator knows the expected patterns of babies and children's development from birth to 5 years old and has an understanding of further development from 5 to 7 years. So to fully meet this, the student needs to evidence all areas of development for 0 to 7 years. Through observation and discussion. This can be gathered over a number of observations. It doesn't have to be done, like we said previously, in one observation. So for example, in one observation, the student might talk or notice a 2-year-old showing early language development by stringing 2 words together, while in another observation, they might be looking at a 6-year-old child starting to write short sentences. But by collecting all and discussing all these observations across different ages, the student can show an understanding of typical developmental milestones. 1AH, which is analyse and explain how cultural background and family circumstances can impact on babies and children's learning and development. So to fully meet this, the student needs to show how these factors impact and influence the children, and through analysis and explanation. So for example, a child from a bilingual home may develop strong language listening skills, as they switch between the 2 languages, while another child might have fewer opportunities for reading at home if books aren't readily available due to financial circumstances. Both cultural and family factors shape how children learn and develop, and this needs to be shown through their analysis and explanation. 1.10, the early years foundation stage, sets out the early educational curriculum requirements from birth to age 5. These are obviously communication and language, physical development, personal, social, and emotional, literacy, maths, understanding the world, and expressive arts. So once again, like with 1.2, to fully meet this criteria, the student needs to evidence children's development in all these areas through observation and discussion. This can be gathered over a number of observations. For example, the student might observe a 4-year-old building with blocks, which shows both mathematical and physical development, or a child painting a picture which links to expressive arts and design. Collecting a range of evidence across the different areas ensures the student meets this criteria. 1.14, the impact of an effective communication and language curriculum shows positive benefits for young children's development, including their spoken language skills, their understanding of language, and their early reading skills, including for children from disadvantaged backgrounds. So to fully meet this, the student needs to explain how it benefits young children, including those from disadvantaged backgrounds. For example, a well-planned story time session can support children's spoken language and comprehension skills. For a child from a disadvantaged background, this may provide opportunities for hearing rich vocabulary they may not otherwise be exposed to at home, which in turn supports their early reading and overall development. 1.16, there are ways to communicate with all children, appropriate for their stages of development. This may include those who have speech or language differences, such as some SEND or neurodivergent children, and those from whom English is an additional language. So to fully meet this, the student needs to share examples of appropriate communication strategies. For instance, with a child who has limited speech, the student might use visual aids or Makaton signs to help them understand. For a child with EAL, the student could use gestures, pictures, and simply repetitive phrases to support communication. These approaches ensure that all children can be included and understood at their stage of development. And the last one, 1BG, identify delays in communication development and describe appropriate support services for babies and children. So to fully meet this criteria, the student needs to recognise when a child may not be meeting expected milestones and know what support is available. For example, if a 3-year-old is not using any recognisable words, the student could raise concerns with the SENCO or suggest a referral to speech and language therapist. The student could also reference previous observations to show an understanding of how to support that child appropriately. Thank you. We're going to be moving on to Leslie.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Good morning, everyone. Just clear my throat. I'm Leslie. I'm based in the Northeast. And just before I start going through my criteria, it'd be really lovely just to see kind of what you have all seen from your students and some sort of specialist aids or resources that they've used with children to support engagement and inclusion. If you can just pop them in the chat, it'd be really good to see, and just offer support to other assessors as well. So if you can see 2.6 and 2E, one is more like a knowledge-based statement, I think is what we've referred to before, and the next is a kind of skill. So 2.6, there are specialist aids, resources and equipment available to support babies and children with SEND. And 2E is use specialist aids. So they kind of need to know about them and then be able to do them. I appreciate this is quite a tricky criteria, especially if students haven't really had the experience of working with children with SEND. But what we kind of noticed within our standardisation activities was it could just be something as small as a toy that the child is used, something that is more individualised to them. So it could be a fidget toy, a comforter, a sensory aid, adapted seating, or even just everyday toys used as distraction methods to support engagement. Obviously, if they don't have the opportunity to demonstrate that, this could then be followed up in a professional discussion where the student would be able to then give those appropriate examples. A lovely strategy actually could be that you introduce students to bucket time. This is kind of one of the first stages of the attention autism approach developed by Gina Davies. And it is kind of what it says is it's a bucket that's filled with interesting materials, resources, toys, which is designed to build shared attention, listening and engagement skills, especially with children with communication or social interaction needs such as autism or speech and language delays. So that could be something lovely. Next one is 2.2. I have already had a query from one of my providers about this. This relates to the SEND code of practice. So again, it's another statement-like criteria. So there are 4 general areas of need and how to balance these against a detailed understanding of an individual baby or child's needs. Communication and interaction, cognition and learning, social, emotional and mental health, physical and sensory needs. While some aspects of this criteria may be observed in practice, it is recognised that much of this will be evidenced through professional discussion. Some elements may also be demonstrated within students' planning. So I think we've spoken lots on student planning, so this is where your planning or your students' planning really needs to be individualised to the children that they're working with. So to fully meet this, we would expect the student to identifying all of those 4 areas outlined, making reference to the SEND code of practice. They would then need to explain how this knowledge informs both their planning and practice, showing an understanding of individual differences and how support is tailored to each child's unique needs rather than applying a generalised approach. I think in the past we've seen a lot of plans that might refer to adaptations for activities, but they're just too general. They're not being specific to the individual children that they're working with. And it's just like Fran said, that they might have planned for an individual child that's not in that day for a variety of reasons, but they still shown how they can demonstrate with those needs in mind and how they might adapt their practice. 3.3, again, another statement like criteria. So an effective early years educator knows about employer, local and national safeguarding policies and procedures as set out in statutory and non-statutory guidance, and the need to stay updated on changes to legislation. So again, this criteria is likely to be met through a professional discussion. The student should be able to reference relevant statutory and non-statutory guidance, such as the EYFS statutory framework, working together to safeguard children, keeping children safe in education, and the student understands the importance of staying up to date with changes, getting them to reflect on, what has there been any changes, how do they implement those changes, how does that knowledge inform their everyday practice, have they been on any sort of training courses, which again, this might not necessarily be fully met within a first observation, more towards the end of their qualification. I'm now going to pass on to my lovely colleague, Kerry.
Hi, I'm Kerry. So I'm going to continue with the theme that we've been looking at. So I'm going to be looking at 4.4. There are different stages of weaning, and it is important to keep knowledge up to date, including knowledge of food allergies and anaphylaxis. When we looked at this criteria, we were saying that the assessor should have a specific conversation with the student around weaning to fully meet this criteria. And then you could use that information to then lead into 4.5 naturally, where it talks about meal times can be a high risk environment for babies and young children in regards to choking, the signs of choking, and that choking can be completely silent. Therefore, children should be supervised closely when eating. So as well as you as an assessor observing your students carry out meal times and ensuring that they're supervising those children appropriately, you could then reinforce it at the end with a professional discussion and get them to discuss choking specifically. And that's when you would get them to refer to the new NHS guidance when it comes to preparing food safely, which then leads us on to 4B, which is carry out risk assessments and risk management in line with employer, local and national requirements, policies and procedures. Laura has already mentioned this criteria, but students should discuss policies and procedures and what their settings expectations are, and in relation to specifically to risk assessments and risk management, but the risk assessment that they carry out should be linked to the activity that they are doing with yourselves, and then they can use that to inform their discussions as well. 4H, explain, plan and carry out respectful care routines appropriate to the development stage, dignity and needs of the child, including eating, feeding and weaning and complementary feeding, nappy changing procedures, potty and toilet training, care of skin, teeth and hair, rest and sleep provision. We expect as many as possible to be observed in practice. However, we are aware that some can be difficult due to settings, policies around our students, or the age group that your students are working with. But our advice is, if you can, please observe these, because it will reduce the amount of professional discussions that you're having with your students. Moving on to 6.4, there are procedures that must be adhered to in the work setting, and the importance of these for reporting, whistleblowing, protecting and promoting the welfare of children, safeguarding, confidentiality, information sharing, use of technology, referring to development concerns, protecting practitioners, for example, media and online presence, staff health and safety, including mental health and wellbeing support. This is exactly the same as 6C. However, this one is talking about the procedures, and for 6C you will be following those procedures. So we would like to see the students try putting elements of that into practice, but each of those points would need to be discussed for it to be fully met as a competency. And lastly, 6B, foster a culture of mutual support, teamwork and continuous improvement that encourages confidential discussion of sensitive issues through effective supervision at all stages of a career. Best practice would be to have the students who have taken part in supervision or some form of meeting or review, and then discuss that linked to the criteria. If not, please support them with hypothetical ideas for their professional discussions so that they can meet that fully. And I'm now going to pass on to Gemma.
Thanks so much, Kerry. Wow, there's some really good top tips and support there for those competencies, particularly the more tricky ones, and how to make sure they're fully met. There was a lot of chat going on, which is brilliant. Some wonderful examples from your own practice. Please don't worry though. I know there's a lot to take in from the session. You will get access to the recording afterwards, and you'll also get a follow-up from myself as well with any of the answers to questions and things we haven't managed to get through in the session. So the last part of the session is for me. I'm conscious of time. I'm hoping, or I'll try my very best not to run over, but if we do by a couple of minutes, I do apologise, and do feel free if you have to jump off. I know some people are off doing observations now as we speak. So this slide, I won't read it all, but I just wanted to share this slide because there's some really lovely feedback from providers, and by way of reassurance in terms of the moderation process, how they've found that. So there's some lovely feedback there about the team's meetings with the moderators and how they really support them to focus their mind and get ready to plan for the next few months ahead, about using our SharePoint and how easy it is to share documents with the moderator, how they can do their schedule of assessment and complete that and upload it to the portal. Somebody said they thought it was wrong because it was so easy. They thought they'd done it wrong, but it's a good process, and it works really well. So you will get a chance to read these again once you get access to the slides after the session. But just to reiterate really what all of the moderation team have said up to now, that it is a really supportive process, and you will get help at every stage should you need it. Okay, so we're going to go back to Slido now, and this is a really quick fire. It's a little bit of a quiz to see how much you've retained from what we've just talked about. Don't worry, it's not a test, and all answers to this are anonymous. It's just to wake us up again. It's been a busy morning of a lot of information before I talk through all of the support that we've got available for you. So you'll have 30 seconds to have a go at answering each of these questions, and there's only a few of them. So first slide, you'll be joining the quiz. So when you open your Slido, you will get a new screen open. And when I click onto the next slide, you will be able to add your name if you want to. You don't have to. Make one up if you'd rather. And when I click through onto the next slide, you'll get asked a couple of quick questions to give a go and see how we get on. Okay, so you can see the first question. So, which version of the competencies should you be using with your Year 2 students? So is it version 5 from December 24 or version 4 from June 23? So you've got about 15 seconds left to go and see if we can all agree which set of competencies we should be using for our Year 2 students. Okay, we're nearly there, and don't worry again, as I say, it's not a test. It'll just help us all focus our minds so we know that we're using the right documentation going forward. Excellent. Most of us knew that it was version 5, December 24. Our website can be a little confusing on occasion, so you may have been using a document previously and there's been an update. So please do make sure that you use the links that are in the slides, which we'll share with you after, so you've got the access to the right documentation. Okay. How many competencies are there in total? Are there 91, 111 or 41? I think we all know the answer to this one. I think it's been mentioned a few times, but let's see. Excellent, excellent. Nobody got that one wrong. I think we've got that number ingrained, haven't we? 111, definitely. True or false? Competencies can be cross-referenced to structured observations. This question comes up a lot, and quite a few people weren't aware that whether they could do this or not. So is that true or false? The competencies can be cross-referenced to structured observations. Nearly there. 5 seconds to go. Let's see. Excellent. So most of us know that they can. I think it was Laura that mentioned that earlier on. Indeed, competencies can be cross-referenced to structured observations. And what is the deadline for completion of the competencies? Is it the 1st of May 26, the 15th of May, or the 31st of May? So I think this, again, I think this was Laura earlier on in her section of the presentation. So really testing your memory here. It was right back at the beginning of the session. So what is the deadline for the completion of competencies? The 1st, the 15th, or the 31st of May? Here we go. Wait for that to refresh. Excellent. So again, most of you knew that that was the 15th of May 26. Well done. Some really good answers to those questions, and lots of you got those right. So well done. One more. When does the moderation window close for part 1? Is it the end of February 26, the beginning of January 26, or the end of January 26? I've got 33 of you, 39 of you answering there. Numbers are going up. Just a few more seconds to go. And these are just really things that, you know, we get asked a lot, common things that we get asked in curriculum calls, and I know all the moderators get as well. So yeah, end of January 26. Lovely. Well done, everybody. That's fantastic. So do keep these things in mind. They're important key bits of information. If ever in doubt, do reach out and ask either the provider development team or indeed your moderator. Okay, well done, Emma. Quickest finger first. It's like, who wants to be a millionaire? Okay, so thank you for taking part in that bit of fun. And I'm now going to go through very quickly the support offer from the provider development team. Don't worry that you will get these slides. If anybody has to leave, it's absolutely fine. So further support for you guys as assessors. So first off, you'll be able to see here that there's a frequently asked questions document for moderation. You can access that on our website. And there's also a T-level support email address on screen there as well. If you've got a question around something like the portal, for example, you can always reach out to them for support in how to use that, or indeed so can your exams team. Do remember, as Laura mentioned at the beginning, if you haven't already registered your student or booked your students onto their OS, please do that now. And that's something that will be done via the portal. So if you need any support with that, they're the best team to reach out to. Next is standardisation materials. Now, we've been asked this quite often recently, and these used to live on the portal. However, they are now going to live on the NCFE website. Okay, so this slide is just to give you an idea of where they're going to appear and how you can find them. They're not there yet, so don't worry if you look for them and can't find them. They're going to be on the website under the support materials section of the qualifications page. So you'll need to make sure that you've got access to those and that you can all see them when they go live. If you're a member of the Best Practice Network, which I'll talk about in just a moment, you'll get a notification from me when they do go live. But please make sure all of your staff are involved in those standardisation activities. They're really important. Next, we've got our upcoming events. By the fact that you're here spending the morning with us today, you'll probably already know where this page is, but just in case you don't, this is the events page for our provider development events. The link is also in the Q&A, and I'll share it as part of the follow-up as well. We've got all of our events live right through to the end of June next year now, so you can plan ahead and get those into your diary, and we'd love to see you at any or all of them if you can make it. Next up, just a quick reminder of that assisting teaching drop-in. So if you are delivering both EYE and AT, please do come along to that drop-in, and we'll be happy to support with any questions that you might have. And moving forward, there'll be some further support for specific AT providers as well. So please do look out for that. The $1,000,000 question that we get asked is, when's the next one? So the next Assessor Network is scheduled for January. It seems like a long way off, but it will be here before you know it, and registrations are open now, so you can register for that. We do get filled up quite quickly, so please do make sure that you get on there and register. Also, I'd just like to say that if you find that you can't attend, please do cancel your registration so that somebody else can take your place if for any reason you can't come, because we do get, you know, really big numbers to these sessions. Next up are our Assessor Padlets. So these are available via the QR codes on screen and the links pinned into the Q&A. And I think Cody will probably very helpfully pop them in the chat as well. When we were talking about resources earlier, for example, around weaning and things like that, we share those resources on these Padlets, so you can access them outside of these sessions and you don't have to go hunting for them. So please do give a quick scan and get those open on your browser for whichever route you're delivering, and you'll find some great resources on there. Next is our best practice network. I know many of you are members already, but if you're not, please do scan the QR or follow the link to join. It's a collaborative team space where you can all come together, you can ask questions. I'm on there, I know Janet's on there, my colleague Elena's on there, and some of the moderators as well, so we can see the kind of questions you're asking and hopefully get to them alongside all of the other support that we offer as well. And equally, you can network with colleagues in other providers as well for top tips, a bit of reassurance and support. So if you haven't already joined, it's a quick form and we'd love to have you, so please do give that one a quick scan as well. You'll also see a QR code on this screen here that if you've got any other questions, you can find lots of information on the qualification page. But there is a little caveat on screen there, so please note that any specific information around last session's marks or tolerance levels can't be discussed directly with your moderator, but you will have access to your moderation report. And I promise to share where the overall moderation report lives on the website as part of the follow-up email that I send out to everybody as well. And you'll see there's also that T-level support email at the bottom of that slide as well, should you need it. Okay, so last couple of slides, and I'm aware I've kept you a couple of minutes over, so I will try and be quick. So we always do a confidence score somewhere at the beginning of the session, and we're just doing another one at the end. So if you could have a think, have you moved? Do you feel a little more confident? Are you the same? It doesn't matter where you fit, as long as there's one thing that you feel you can take away from today that may have reassured you, or something that you might like to try moving forward with your students, or even something that you'd like to discuss with your moderator when the time arises. It's just nice for us to see whether anything's sort of changed and how people are feeling towards the end of the session. It's nice to see that we've got a slightly higher percentage of people moving up the scale. That's lovely to see. But do remember, we're here to support you. And we're here to help guide you through the whole process of the qualification as a whole, and of the particularly the assignment 2 part 1 in the case of this session. So please do continue to reach out, and thank you for that. Okay, so last few questions. Have you found this session has increased your knowledge and understanding for assignment 2 part 1? Again, not a trick question, and I know there was a lot to listen to in the session, and all of it will have felt as equally useful as the bit previous. And don't worry if you haven't taken all of it in, you will get access to the recording to watch it back. And as I said, we are still here in the background to support you. It's nice to see that 95% of you that have answered that do feel that you are that your knowledge has increased. If you still feel that it hasn't, or there's something that's troubling you, please do reach out, and you'll see how to reach out to us. In fact, I'll ask Cody if she can please pop in the link to the chat for booking a curriculum call with either my team, or, you know, do remember you can reach out to your moderator as well. So last question then for the session, other than the feedback. Can you share one thing that you think you might do following today's session? And that could be absolutely anything. It might be adopting one of the approaches that Rachel mentioned on her video. It might be that you've seen something in the chat that one of your peers has done that you're going to give a try. It might be just that you're going to reach out to provider development for a call, or drop your moderator an email. it might be that you're just going to sit and watch the recording over and over again until you feel more confident, which, yes, somebody's just put that already. Whatever it is, you know, take that key takeaway and act on it and see if you can, you know, try and use something that we've shared today to help support you going forward. Yes, there is a lot of information. There is a lot. Share the video with your colleagues, definitely. And I will share Rachel's video separate to the recording of this session as well. So it's a bit more bite-sized if you want to share that with colleagues. And indeed, you know, share it with your students. You know, they're also more than welcome to watch this as well to help them gauge expectations. Use the information to inform professional discussion. Not cry, please don't cry. We're here to support you. If you feel that that's, you know, something that you're thinking, goodness, I feel really overwhelmed, please do reach out. I can't stress that enough. We are here to help you. But there's some fantastic sessions, fantastic suggestions there of things you're going to take away and try. And I'm sure Rachel will be thrilled that her video supported so many of you this morning. Okay, so the last screen then before we sign off, and I'm aware I've kept you 6 minutes over, so apologies for that. If you could please just scan the QR code on screen, or I think Cody will be popping a link into the chat if you don't have access to a smartphone, and give us a bit of feedback on this morning's session. It really does help us plan for future sessions. So pop in there any suggestions you've got for upcoming networks. You know, we're still in the planning stages for the January one, for example. So please do let us know if there's anything you think that would be useful. For example, the AT drop-in clinic that we've put on was as a result of feedback from the last session. So we do listen and we'd love to have your feedback. If you can spare a minute to do that, we'd really appreciate it. Lastly, any questions that we haven't got to, we will be collating them after the session and they will also form part of the follow-up. So thank you so much to all of you for taking time out to join us today, and we hope to see you at events going forward. Please do continue to reach out and support each other, and best of luck with assignment 2 part 1. Thanks so much, everybody.